If you must blink, do it now. Pay careful attention to everything you see. If you look away, even for an instant, then our hero will surely perish.
Are you food or are you sex?
You can't keep us here. You gotta let us go.
We're not keeping you. You're just staying.
For as long as I can remember, I've been waiting for my parents to die.
I need you to help me get home. Okay, buddy?
Okay, buddy.
Now that's a proper introduction.
Hey, Mr. Mash.
Hey, Mr. Biggers.
Seems like it's been a while since you and I have been behind the mic together. And hey, not only are we back and recording, we're recording here in our original studio.
Studio A. Short for Studio Awesome.
I gotta tell you, it's been 2 years since recording up here. We've been recording in Studio B, Studio Basement. For a long time, I didn't have a working PC, which is where we used to record the show. And now I finally have a working PC again, so now we're back here above ground with the humans.
They still exist?
Yeah. And hey, man, it's January, so you know what that means?
Phantom Awards!
Yes! That is that time once a year when we take a look back on the year that was and hand out awards for direction and monster design. This is the Bangers and Mash show, so we are talking about sci-fi, fantasy, and horror movies.
Those still exist?
This is, what, our 4th Phantom Award together? It's the 15th one in total.
You did them for us in high school, too.
I should say this is the 5th year recording the Phantom Awards.
My God.
We're going to be doing something a little different with this year's Phantom Awards. Various guest presenters have been brought in to talk about some of the nominees. You'll be hearing from them throughout the episode. So hey, why don't we just go ahead and get started? Let's just jump in with our first category on the pile here.
Best Actor.
Best Actor. What are our nominees, Mr. Mash?
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yes, our first nominee is Bender Dre Kimberbin for Doctor Strange. I like this movie.
I do as well.
We've given Mr. Benedict Cumberbatch a lot of hard times on the show because he has a silly name and women love him for some reason. He did a very good job with Doctor Strange.
I agree.
At the beginning of the movie, he's this asshole, and by the end, he is on his way to becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. Especially that moment where he shows up and says, Dormammu, I have come to bargain.
Yeah.
That was actually kind of badass.
I love the movie. But they needed to have him say some more iconic Doctor Strange spells, and I'm really hoping that later films, they have him throw out a bolt of Balthak.
Infinity Wars, Doctor Strange has to say, by the hoary host of Hofgar.
Yeah. Shit like that. But other than that, it was pretty good Doctor Strange.
Yeah. Our second nominee is Paul Dano for Swiss Army Man. Here's friend of the show, Marcus Jones from CrushCelluloid.com.
Paul Dano has had such a diverse career, appearing in everything from silly romantic comedies to award-grabbing prestige pictures, playing hero or villain interchangeably. After giving many notable performances, he may have done his best work yet in last year's Swiss Army Man. He carries the whole film with a solid mix of desperation, hope, and even innocence against the backdrop of what is surely one of the most fucked up films of recent memory. He has some help and support from Daniel Radcliffe. They are perhaps the sweetest on-screen couple in years, but even that is just an extension of his character psyche, and Dano does the heavy lifting. Pun intended. Dano as Hank is a man wrestling with his own thoughts, fears, and mental damage out loud against certain death and a world that might not want him back anyway. The performance Dano gives here was enough to raise what was jokingly known as the Farting Corpse movie on the internet into one of the best films of last year. And as his character's story plays out, he's able to make you empathize, make you cringe, make you worry, make you smile, and break your heart like only someone of immense talent could do.
Our next presenter is Jacob Roth of the Public Defender's charity Gideon's Promise to discuss Colin Farrell's Best Actor nomination for The Lobster.
Yorgos Lanthimos does his actors no favors in The Lobster, pulling overly mannered, chilly, and frankly weird performances from the entire cast in what is an overly mannered, chilly, and frankly weird film. So it's kind of a small miracle that Colin Farrell manages to make you care about his character, despite Lanthimos' fever-dreaming Wes Anderson shtick. Farrell's David is just like any of us would be trapped in a situation where we face certain doom, even if that doom is transmutation into a crustacean, panicked, and looking for any exit. And despite the limited emotional palette the lobster is drawn in, Farrell manages to find shades of gray, most of it coming from his perpetually sad, world-weary face. He's our logical center, behaving as we would given the dictates of his dystopia, and it takes an expert performance to make holding a steak knife to your own eye seem not only understandable, but sensible. Farrell is that expert, and he's always been a difficult actor to pin down, as likely to appear in a Terrence Malick flick as he is undercooked action schlock like SWAT. He appears to have a one for them, one for me deal with the studios. The Lobster was obviously one for him, and his other 2016 release, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, was definitely one for them. That means it's his turn again for the next picture, and given his track record and his work in The Lobster, I'm sure the movie and his performance in it will at the very least be singular.
Alright, did you see Pete's Dragon?
I did not see Pete's Dragon.
Oak Fegley is the little boy from Pete's Dragon. He's Pete. A young performer. I think this is, if not his first movie, one of his first movies. It's always really great when you have a young actor come up and they're genuinely good, because there are so many bad child actors. And this kid has a lot of talent. He really commands the screen, really makes you sympathize with this wild child character, this character who's been living in the woods with his pet dragon for so many years. Hopefully, he'll go on to have a long career, because I think he has a lot of talent. Okay, you've seen this one.
Deadpool.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool.
Sexy motherfucker.
Deadpool is not a character that's beloved by everybody. Some people find the character irritating.
That's the purpose of the character, is to be annoying.
And
you know, that's like saying, I don't like Batman because he's got bat ears on his cowl.
Ryan Reynolds, this is the part he was born to play.
Yeah, he's really good at it.
I've taken a slow road with Reynolds, and he actually won the Phantom for Best Actor last year for the voices. I really have come around, and he's great in this film. Our next nominee is Michael Shannon for Midnight Special. Michael Shannon is one of the best character actors working today. Though Shannon excels at Unhinged, in Midnight Special he plays a father totally devoted to his family. Shannon says a lot with a tense stare or a jittery blink. He doesn't seem to understand everything that's happening around him, but remains steadfast in his devotion to his son, and determined to see the boy's destiny to its conclusion. And the winner for Best Actor in a Sci-Fi Fantasy or Horror Film in 2016...
See, you just have to tape them, don't you? You can't help yourself.
And the Phantom goes to Paul Dano and Swiss Army Man. Alright, what's the next thing on the pile here, JD?
Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah, you'll get to open that one.
What, put extra tape on this one?
Yes.
Bastard.
So what's our nominees for Best Supporting Actor, JD? To discuss John Goodman's Best Supporting Actor nomination for 10 Cloverfield Lane, here is Anthony Pizzo.
In 10 Cloverfield Lane, John Goodman plays Howard, a man who has spirited away Mary Elizabeth Winstead's Michelle to his doomsday bunker on the pretense of saving her from a deadly event that has effectively cleansed the planet of all life. Goodman gives an amazing performance, and part of what makes it so compelling is that he manages to keep the character at arm's length for pretty much the entire movie. Goodman is largely known for jumping back and forth between extremes, playing gentle giants and raving maniacs, but they're all people who wear their personalities on their sleeves. Even when you consider his work with the Coen brothers, where there's a certain amount of subterfuge, it's clear he's playing a ticking time bomb, and there's a transparency that lets you see through his composed facade. That's missing in 10 Cloverfield Lane, and it's absolutely magnetic. It's clear from the start that Howard is dangerous, but we can never tell if it's because he's awkward and has anger management issues, or if he's hiding something much more sinister. Are his breathing exercises really to help him rein in his temper, or is it a ploy to threaten the people he's captured? It's an incredibly unnerving performance, and one of the year's best.
Our next nominee, Tom Holland for Captain America Civil War. Now, who did Tom Holland play in this again?
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can, spins a web,
any size,
catches thieves, just like flies. Look
out! Here comes the Spider-Man. A lot of comic fans have been jumping the gun and saying, oh man, this kid is great, he's the best Spider-Man ever. That's maybe a little premature, but there's no doubt that this was the actor and the character everybody was talking about when walking out of this movie.
Yeah, he definitely made that movie.
What was the line they had about The Empire Strikes Back?
You guys ever see this really old movie called Empire Strikes Back?
And the film ends with that teaser promising more adventures, and obviously we're going to be getting a solo Spider-Man movie starring Tom Holland this summer. Going into this, I'm thinking, man, I'm all Spider-Man out. This is going to be our third reboot in a decade. Actually was excited to see more of this actor as his character following this movie.
Yeah.
To discuss Christopher Lloyd's Best Actor nomination for I Am Not a Serial Killer, here's Bridget Taylor.
You may remember Doc Brown. You'll never forget Judge Doom. But Christopher Lloyd's ancient, shuffling Crowley in I Am Not a Serial Killer seems almost created to be forgotten, overlooked. He's the old man next door with a nice wife and one foot in the grave. Of course, he's also an organ-stealing creature out of someone's vivid nightmare, but that's almost beside the point. I Am Not a Serial Killer is not a movie about explosions or bright colors or even the gory murders that punctuate its running time. It's about monsters and what they might have in common. As Crowley, Lloyd has to be both alien and painfully familiar, a fairy tale creature whose human heart seals his doom more effectively than any enchanted sword could do. Lloyd accomplishes this beautifully, especially in his understated, tension-filled scenes with lead actor Max Records. Crowley could easily have been a scene-chewing villain, but Lloyd keeps the focus where it should be, on the tightrope between man and monster, and the choices made by those who walk it. In the dark and understated world of I Am Not a Serial Killer, he fits right in, helping make this movie all the more unsettling.
To discuss Daniel Radcliffe's Best Supporting Actor nomination for Swiss Army Man, here is Tom Peeler from SycamoreStreetStudios.com.
Lover, brother, guide, friend. Manny, the farting corpse, remarkably portrayed by Daniel Radcliffe, endows Swiss Army Man with a beating heart that works in tandem with the film's soul, Paul Dano, to deliver one of the finest journeys of self-discovery ever put to film. A Jiminy Cricket for the millennial generation, Manny stands as the earnest, innocent, youthful id we bury in our adult years, ignorant to the simple joys and transformative salvation we could find if we just followed our hearts. For this, the Phantom Awards are proud to nominate Daniel Radcliffe for Swiss Army Man.
Once again, here is Marcus Jones talking about Patrick Stewart in Green Room.
A good villain can be hard to find. It's easy to overplay evil to the point of campiness, even, and maybe especially for, a trained Shakespearean actor like Patrick Stewart. I mean, just see Masterminds. But in last year's Green Room, Jeremy Saulnier's excellent follow-up to Blue Ruin, Stewart creates perhaps his most terrifying villain yet. His character of Darcy is subdued and soft-spoken, yet blunt, as the leader of a small neo-Nazi group in backwoods Washington. As the situation in the film escalates, Stewart calmly handles each new rift in his plans, ordering his minions to keep control of the small world that he is god of. His look and demeanor is almost relaxing, making you think that you could trust his intentions, which gets some of the characters into trouble. He's polite and almost loving to his crew, but can strike like a cobra when needed. And at the end of the day, he's just a warped human being, not some untouchable monster like so many villains are. His work can maybe best be summed up with the scene where he addresses the crowd of bikers and skinheads like a high school principal, telling them about the white power workshops going on Wednesday and saying, "Remember, this is a movement, not a party." And in today's current social climate, isn't that the scariest villain of all?
To talk about Alan Tudyk in Rogue One, a Star Wars story, I once again introduce you to Anthony Pizzo.
In Rogue One, a Star Wars story, Alan Tudyk plays a droid named K2SO, and not, as I have to keep reminding myself, KRS-One. K2SO is an Imperial droid that's been captured and reprogrammed by the Rebellion, and he's not particularly happy about it. It's not that he wants to harm his compatriots, it's just he doesn't want to be involved. He's dry and detached in a way that, aside from A New Hope's Han Solo, is kind of foreign to the Star Wars universe, especially in comic relief. Apparently Tudyk improvised most of his lines, and I think that's the reason his jokes feel so unique. He's playing off his fellow actors in the moment, directing jokes to them rather than the audience. He's also unusually subdued for a Star Wars droid, who, when they speak, usually sound like 1930s cartoon characters. I admit this view may be colored by the droids who work in the repair bay at Disney Star Tours attraction, but given Lucas's sources of inspiration, I don't think I'm far off. Anyway, Tudyk is great in the role.
You ready to open the envelope, my friend?
Yes.
And the Phantom for Best Supporting Actor goes to...
And the Phantom Award goes to John Goodham for 10 Cloverfield Lane.
John Goodham, he's lost a lot of weight, and I think he's paid his dues. You don't have to make fat jokes about him.
But maybe I meant he's a ham. Like Scooby-Doo's a ham, you know, what a ham. John Wayne was a ham. You know, that kind of ham. Maybe I meant that kind of ham. Why's always gotta go to fat with you? Is that a fat joke? Are you fat-shaming me right now?
Yes, I'm fat-shaming
you. fat-shaming fat motherfucker. You fat pot on a fat kettle black.
Our next category is Best Supporting Actress.
Isn't it Best Actress?
These have been randomized. The first nominee is Ella Ballantine for The Monster. One of the most 10 straight-up horror films of the year, The Monster is mostly a two-woman showcase for previous Phantom winner Zoe Kazan and newcomer Ella Ballantine. Ballantine emerges as the surprise talent. At such a young age, she panics extremely well, spending most of the film in a terrified state. Yet Ballantine is also strong enough of an actress to make the character's climactic transformation into a fighter equally believable.
Okay, and Maria Bello for Lights Out.
This film's treatment of mental illness, which it wraps up in modern ghost movie conventions, is in questionable taste. However, that isn't a knock against Maria Ballow's performance. As a woman torn apart by her rather literal demons, Ballow does a good job of portraying someone at the end of her rope. The lack of sleep in Ballow's eyes, along with her shaky body language and tortured delivery, clearly makes her the standout element. Alright, next we have
Leslie Jones for Ghostbusters.
Now, a lot of people were...
The power of Patty compels you!
A lot of people were heaping praise on Kate McKinnon for this movie, and I liked McKinnon, but I thought her character was a little too self-consciously weird in a way that was slightly off-putting.
Yeah.
And for me, Leslie Jones was the breakout talent for this movie.
Yeah, she was awesome. Down-homey aura that she adds to the team.
Yeah, but it's not reductive either.
She gives the much-needed beatnik personality.
She's actually this really smart, insightful character.
But she also is not a scientist. Proton pack, which would be like, you mean the beam thingy I'm wearing?
Yeah, and she was really funny. Her comedic timing, the one-liners they gave her really worked very well. She was definitely one of the standout
parts
of it.
Not to mention her uncle.
Oh, one of the best surprises in the film, yeah, Ernie Hudson getting in there. Coming to you from SwampFlix.com, here is Brandon Ledet talking about Jenna Malone's nomination for The Neon Demon.
Jenna Malone has been enjoying this period of critical praise that she probably hasn't seen since she was a child actor in stuff like Donnie Darko and Contact. And it started a few years ago when she first appeared in one of the Hunger Games films, but recently in more artier projects like Inherent Vice and Nocturnal Animals, she's been popping up to show this icy, confident adult persona we're not used to seeing her portray on film. And I think the pinnacle of that might have been in The Neon Demon last year. The Neon Demon was my favorite movie overall, so I'm very prejudiced to her performance in the film, but in a movie where all these people are surrounding Elle Fanning's characters, circling her like hungry wolves, you have Jenna Malone stands as this sort of lone spider who is also ready to pounce on this girl and tear her to shreds, but does so in this calm, inviting way that lures her into her web, quite literally towards the end when Elle Fanning arrives at the mansion where she's staying, and has a much slower, smarter, more confident way of wanting to suck a life out of this young thing that everybody wants a piece of. She is perfectly icy and funny in her role as a character that's not quite apparently a villain from the onset, but it's obvious to the audience at least that she has ulterior motives in what she's saying out loud. I really like how that villainy develops over the course of the movie. If nothing else, her delivery of the line, "Are you food or are you sex?" is going to be an iconic horror movie staple that I think people will hold on to for a few years, even if the movie is divisive overall.
Alright, our next nominee is Alison Sadal from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And I gotta tell you, walking out of this movie, I kind of had a crush on this actress.
She's pretty hot.
And it's not just the fact that she's obviously a very attractive woman. She's this empath who can feel what everybody's going to say before they say it.
Yeah.
And she plays it in this very enchanting, charming way.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the highlights of the movie. Okay,
and
next.
Tilda Swinton for Doctor Strange.
Yes, as the Ancient One. And some people were giving this movie shit. They cast an Irish woman as this traditionally Asian character. That was a no-win scenario, because if they had cast an Asian actor in this part, the movie would have gotten bullshit for, oh, it's a ridiculous, reductive Asian stereotype, the wise sensei.
And I think Disney knew that, so they just went with what they thought was the best casting.
I'm a fan of Tilda Swinton. She's a previous Phantom Award winner. She projects the sense of being the wise mentor, but she also brings a lot of humor to the part, but at the same time, that humor doesn't undermine the serious scenarios they're in.
Yeah.
Her last scene in the movie in particular I found to be rather touching.
Yeah.
Alright. The Phantom goes to...
Not anybody I care about, probably.
Jenna Malone for The Neon Demon.
Woo!
Our next category is...
Best Actress.
You couldn't see what he just did, guys, and that was hilarious. I'm holding the sign upside down. Our nominees are... Ethan Warren is the director of an independent film called West of Her, which you can learn more about at westofherfilm.com. And he's here to talk about Amy Adams' Best Actress nomination for Arrival.
Amy Adams' performance in Arrival is one that is almost impossible to appreciate the first time through. The film sets us up to believe that we are watching a woman who is crippled by her grief over a lost child. And it isn't until the ending that we realize that's actually not who we've been watching. There's something more complicated going on with the storytelling. So it's only on the second viewing that you can appreciate that Adams is playing a woman struggling out of what looks like clinical depression. Early on, she says to her mother, "You know me, I'm just about the same." And we assume that this refers to her grief, but the second time you realize that we're actually watching a woman who isn't reconnecting with the world, but actually connecting with it for the first time. And that's an entirely different, but equally moving story. By now we have seen so many amazing performances by Amy Adams that it can be easy to take her for granted, but that means it's easy to miss the subtleties of her performance. By the midpoint, she's basically playing a character who thinks she's going insane, and that revelation only hits the second time, when it's suddenly plain as day. And that's the real triumph of this performance. The filmmakers are tricking the audience, and it's up to Adams to make that trickery feel honest. She has to create a character with enough space for us to incorrectly fill in the blanks, while on the second viewing, those blanks just represent unanswered questions about who she is. Questions that don't need answering because she feels real, even when she's enigmatic. While my first viewing of Arrival just wrecked me, the second was even more rewarding as I watched this tentative, hollow woman take incremental steps towards engagement and connection for what seems like the first time. And her performance goes from devastating to moving, and it seems to me that that's a much more difficult trick, and one that takes an actress of considerable skill, and Amy Adams makes it look easy.
Here is Brandon Ledet of SwampFlix.com to talk about Sarah Bogler and Emily.
2016 was overloaded with these intense confined space thrillers where these ordinary people were trapped in these small spaces by calm but menacing figures that gradually revealed how evil they could be over the course of the film. So you have like Patrick Stewart in Green Room, John Goodman in 10 Cloverfield Lane, Stephen Lang as the blind man in Don't Breathe, and then there's a whole house full of creepy occult types in The Invitation. But I think out of all these performances, they've all gotten their due as far as critical acclaim goes. The one that slipped under the radar is Sarah Bulger in Emily. She plays a babysitter that starts off as a kid's dream. She allows these children to do whatever you would want your babysitter to allow you to do. They draw on the walls, they play dress up and make a mess in the living room, they eat all the junk food they want. But there's always this sort of sinister undertone to her allowing them do these things, to the point where it almost feels like empty nihilism. Early in the film, when she's allowing to do these things and lets that icy undertone creep to the surface, it really is just as tense as any of those films I mentioned at the top of that list. She is great in this film at undercutting a very cheery, pristine surface to allow the nihilistic killer to gradually leak to the surface. And then by the time the film hits its more unhinged third act, it becomes more of a standard thriller or horror film. That's when Bulger really lets loose, and you get to see her do some really sociopathic killer character work, and she becomes a parent's worst nightmare. Which is also, I guess, a perversion of what a child would want in a babysitter. She lets them do everything their parents wouldn't, but it goes way too far to the point where she definitely does not have their best interest in mind, which is a great slow reveal, and she's great at conveying it.
Once again, here's Ethan Warren talking about Lauren Ashley Carter in Darling.
For a really small film, Lauren Ashley Carter needs to do something pretty complex in Darling. Theoretically, going from an innocent Tim Burton sketch of a girl to a knife-wielding psycho should be easy enough, but there are so many ways that this performance could go wrong and kill the movie, particularly when she's alone on screen for virtually the entire time, and required to hold our attention even when she's silent. For one thing, the film is deliberately artificial and stylized, so she has to fit into that world while also being relatable enough to function as a perspective character for us. She has to have this potential for darkness from the very beginning so that the shift is believable, but not so much so that it feels like a foregone conclusion, and she has to play that shift as complex enough that the film stays surprising. And it's that complexity that makes the performance one of this year's best. We see her wrestle with something like demonic possession, and her psyche starts cracking like a mirror with different shards showing us different angles on the same person, and within one scene she will slip from meek to empowered and then back with a look that indicates that she is aware of what just happened, and she's terrified. And so about halfway it goes from horror pastiche to this haunting portrayal of mental illness. We are watching a woman grapple with losing control of her actions and experiencing her own mind transforming into something that she doesn't recognize. And it is intensely painful to anyone who has ever watched a loved one slip into any type of dissociative state. And then the film and the performance jump right back to the flat-out grotesque, and you realize, wow, this Lauren Ashley Carter really can do just about everything. From Jamie Lee Curtis to Mary Elizabeth Winstead, horror films have been incubators for incredibly talented, versatile actresses to hone their craft until they are ready to explode into stardom. And if there is justice in the world, Darling will be the film that launches Lauren Ashley Carter to much bigger things.
From MedleyAnna.com, here is Guy Volin talking about Anya Taylor-Joy in The Witch.
Newcomer Anya Taylor-Joy was the standout in a strong ensemble in The Witch, a New England folktale, as the oldest daughter of an exiled Puritan clergyman struggling to survive in the inhospitable woods. Taylor-Joy presents a haunting portrait of a girl on the cusp of womanhood, whose own natural urges are at war with her fervent religious belief, and whose rebellious tendencies spiral out of control, leading to a terrible fate. Her big-eyed intensity lends a real sense of terror and credibility to the signs and wonders that gradually overtake the family. Anya Taylor-Joy is nominated for Best Actress for The Witch.
Here's Joseph J. Finn to discuss the nomination of Ruth Wilson for I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House.
Hello everyone, this is Joseph Finn, and I am here to speak in favor of Ruth Wilson for lead actress for I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. Ruth Wilson is an actress that was completely new to me before this movie, and that's a little bit of why I love her in this part of a doomed hospice nurse narrating her year in a house that may be haunted by a ghost or may just be haunted by her own memories, as I don't have any preconceived notions about her imposing on this excellent, sad, and lonely performance. As Wilson's nurse spends her year caring for her charge upstairs, having the rare visit from her client's lawyer, and trying to catch any sort of TV on an old rabbit ear set, she builds a sense of foreboding and chills almost completely by herself. By the time she gets curious enough to read her client's most famous novel, which is about a character eerily like her, Wilson has built up this unease and dread about what might be happening so well that you almost don't need the supernatural element, and indeed, there may be none at all. Doing this much work by yourself as an actor in a movie can be a tricky thing, where you might go overboard in expressing yourself to keep the movie alive, alive. Wilson goes the other way and is quiet and thoughtful, almost withdrawn, but with just enough perfectly timed expressions and looks to keep you interested in her and her story. It's a fantastic, almost solo performance that deserves to be thought of as among the best of the year, and I hope you give it due consideration.
And our final nominee is Mary Elizabeth Winstead for 10 Cloverfield Lane. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, now and forever Ramona Flowers, shows a real steal as Michelle, the lead character in this film. Her attempts to escape Howard reveals an on-her-feet ingenuity that continues to define the character throughout the film. Winstead also gets some vulnerable moments, showing a nice range. Michelle has a standard but deeply satisfying character arc. Boy, people going crazy in isolated locations, that was a big theme in this year's horror, wasn't it?
Probably, yeah. All right, and the Phantom Award goes to Lord Ashley Carter for Darling. Yay!
Ah, one of my favorites last year. Our next category is
Best Ensemble.
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 Are we French now?
Yeah, sure.
Our next nominee for Best Ensemble is Green Room. Green Room has got a seriously great ensemble. I really like Imogen Poots as a dryly sarcastic neo-Nazi who develops a soul and earns the audience's sympathies. Yet the band is where it's at. The sadly late Anton Yelchin panics extremely well, retaining an earthly humanity even when surrounded by craziness. Elia Shawkat has a similar quality as Sam, bringing a sweaty panic to her scenes. Joe Cole's Reese is maybe the most aggressive of the group, though Cole maintains a desperate compassion that keeps the character from becoming a jerk. Something similar can be said of Holm Turner's Tiger, who vacillates between angry and laid back rather nicely. And Tom Peeler is back to discuss the Best Ensemble nomination for Kubo and the Two Strings.
The adventure of a lifetime needs suitable traveling companions and foes who can challenge us to become our best selves. Luckily, the ensemble assembled by Leica Studios' Kubo and the Two Strings is a cast for the ages. The steely-voiced nerves of Charlize Theron, the confident but clumsy swagger of Matthew McConaughey, and the playful, courageous delivery of Art Parkinson as the titular hero all unite to transport us to a world where wonder and adventure wait around every turn. Even in the face of Ralph Fiennes and Rooney Mara as the film's sinister antagonists, this collection of famous voices all blend into Leica's wonderfully realized world seamlessly, creating one of animation's finest fantasies. For this, the Phantom Awards are proud to nominate the ensemble of Kubo and the Two Strings.
Our next nominee for Best Ensemble is The Jungle Book. Disney's strategy of nostalgia-grabbing remakes of their classic cartoons has yet to produce a genuinely good film. The Jungle Book, however, comes the closest, and is primarily worth seeing for its inspired casting. Christopher Walken as a singing, dancing King Louie is worth the price of admission alone. Bill Murray is also excellently cast as Baloo, bringing all his laid-back charms to the part. The likes of Ben Kingsley as Bagheera and a sinister Idris Elba as Shere Khan round out an all-star cast. Here's Tom Peeler again, talking about the ensemble cast of Star Trek Beyond.
When assembled in 2009, the crew of the USS Enterprise had a shadow big enough to eclipse the stars hanging above them. Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto were tasked with leading an ensemble that had to rebirth some of fiction's most famous characters, while also enticing new audiences into joining Kirk and his team on a series of fresh adventures. 7 years into their mission, the cast of Star Trek Beyond remain one of cinema's finest, with magnetic chemistry and talent as abundant as the galaxies above. The latest adventure of the Enterprise crew is made even more affecting by the real-life loss of Anton Yelchin, who endeared himself to audiences as Chekhov with as much passion and heart as his peers, turning this crew into what feels like a full-fledged family and making his final turn an emotionally resonant one. For this, the Phantom Awards are proud to nominate the ensemble of Star Trek Beyond.
And the next nominee for Best Ensemble is Trash Fire. The reason Trash Fire is nominated for Best Ensemble is because I loved every single performance in this movie. Adrian Grenier happily occupies the border between caustic and sympathetic, leading the film with his witheringly snide dialogue. Angela Trimber matches him, barb for barb, as Owen's long-suffering girlfriend. During their arguments, there's a mutual understanding between the two, making their relationship believable, if fraught. Fionnuala Flanagan, I fucked that name up, emerges as one of the perfectly despicable villains of the year. Lastly, Annalyn McCord, a previous Phantom winner for her performance in Richard Bass's also excellent Excision, is simultaneously graceful and raw as an exposed nerve. It's a brilliant cast. And lastly, we have X-Men Apocalypse. The thing with Apocalypse is really setting up the new cast that we're going to be following in the next couple movies, presumably. What did you think of the new actors playing Cyclops and Jean Grey and Nightcrawler, etc.?
I really like the girl who's playing Jean Grey.
Yeah, Sophie Turner, I think?
Yeah, it's actually a natural redhead.
Well, that is nice.
Aside from that, she really does know how to embody the characteristics of the character.
I like Cody Smith-McPhee as Nightcrawler. That was cool.
Yeah, he was a good Nightcrawler.
Happy to see more of Evan Peters as Quicksilver, because he was clearly one of the standout characters in Days of Future Past. Who would have thought the Fox Quicksilver would have been way more memorable than the Marvel Quicksilver?
Fox decided to keep their Quicksilver on.
Yeah,
they didn't kill him off in the first movie. Which I'm still not convinced he's dead. He's coming back, right? We have rejuvenation, tanks, and canon.
Nobody stays dead in comics. And the Phantom goes to
Are you going to tape them next year?
Yeah, of course I'm going to tape them next year.
Why do you hate me? And yourself.
And the Phantom goes to the cast of Green Room. Rest in peace, Anton Yelchin.
Woo! Best director, yeah!
Alright, our first nominee... What the fuck was that noise? Did you turn into a foghorn? So hey, our first nominee is Hideki Anno for Shin Gojira, or Godzilla. Hideki Anno, obviously famous for his work in animation with the Evangelion series, which we're on record as being big fans of. His direction in the new Godzilla movie is one of the highlights of the film. The use of the widescreen. I'm thinking of shots where the tail swings over the camera, or Godzilla burns Tokyo to the ground. It really gives you a sense of the scale of this creature.
Now, I didn't so much agree with all the talking.
There were a lot of subtitles on screen. Yes, that's true.
At some point, I was just giving up. I just want to see Godzilla fuck shit up. But the Godzilla stuff was really cool.
I'm going to apologize in advance for fucking up this next name. Babak Anvari is our next Best Director nominee for Under the Shadow. Under the Shadow is set in a sparsely populated apartment building in the middle of a war zone. Babak Anvari uses the limited space to generate as much tension as possible, making the most of the tight corners and deep shadows. The special effects are simple but beautifully executed, making a shifting tablecloth a portal to another world, and a briefly glimpsed old man a terrifying specter. Next nominee is Robert Eggers for The Witch. The direction of the movie was a standout aspect of it.
Yeah. I liked this film. It was a little slower than I normally get into, but it was a good film.
Really creates this sense of dread that's very powerful. We can really credit Eggers' direction for a lot of that.
And he gets more of the old naked woman.
Needs more of the old naked woman? Well, can't you say that of all films?
Yeah, one film can't be improved by an old naked woman.
Yeah, eating a baby.
Eating a baby.
And, our next nominee is Mickey Keating for Darling. Darling is a triumph of direction, music, atmosphere, and tone. From the opening minutes, the film casts a spell on the viewer. The high-contrast black and white photography puts the film in an exaggerated dream world. The editing is broken glass harsh. Lauren Ashley Carter's glaring eyes or screaming face will flash on screen for a split second, following equally brief images of blood or the building's hallways. Keating repeatedly uses this effect, the device becoming more unnerving with each application. Darling is custom built to get under your skin and freak you out, a goal it succeeds wildly at. Our next nominee is Nicholas Winding Refn for The Neon Demon. Nicholas Winding Refn doesn't do subtle. The Neon Demon is a monster movie, and the monster is our image-obsessed culture. Then again, for all the criticism Refn lobs at the fashion industry, The Neon Demon is an awfully pretty movie. For long stretches of time, Refn totally abandons narrative in favor of searing visuals. A visit to a nightclub is framed by strobing red lights. A modeling gig transforms into a series of surreal images. Even regular scenes are bathed in neon colors. The director pushes his style as far as it can go, creating a nightmare netherworld of pastel colors and blinking lights. Our final nominee is Jeremy Saulnier for Green Room. Even the early scenes of Green Room have a jittery unease to them. Director Saulnier shows the band bonding during a shitty tour while suggesting something bad will happen soon. After the standoff starts, Green Room rams the tension down the viewer's throat. The film concludes with a tense walk through the woods, uncertain of what will happen next. Saulnier knows when to turn the volume up too. A negotiation with the neo-Nazis bursts into violence. Anton Yelchin's arm being brutally slashed while attempting to hold the door shut. The film is grim but constantly pumping, like the punk music that inspired it.
And the Phantom Award goes to Nicholas Winding for Neon Demon, right?
Yeah, you peaked, you peaker. Nicholas Winding Refn is definitely one of the premier cult filmmakers of the day, and his visual sense is just nuts. Alright, next category. Hey, Best Writing. First nominee is Richard Raymond and Harry Herbeck for Emily, a disturbing thriller that heads in increasingly creepy directions. The viewer is forced to watch, seasick, as another unnerving event happens. The script packs the runtime full of memorable struggles and sickening reveals. This clever streak runs out before the end, but I still enjoyed this one a lot. Welcome back, Jacob Roth, to talk about Arrival's nomination for Best Writing.
There is no way to talk about Eric Heiserer's screenplay for Arrival, adapted from Ted Chiang's short story, Story of Your Life, without talking about the ending. So if you don't want to be spoiled, it's best if you just hit the skip ahead 15 seconds button about 8 times. I'll wait. Okay, so now that we're alone, I hate to be that guy who says he saw the twist coming, but, well, I saw the twist coming. Anybody who has read Slaughterhouse-5 will recognize that Louise Banks, in learning Heptapodian, has, like Billy Pilgrim, become unstuck in time. It wrecked me emotionally anyway. You see, I have 2 small children, 2 girls, and Louise's decision to have her daughter, despite knowing that her daughter's life will be cut short by illness, really resonated with me because I'd make the same decision. Call me selfish if you want to, but my life has been enriched in infinite ways by my children's existence. Even if their lives prove to be short, And that sound you hear is me furiously knocking on wood. I wouldn't trade either of them for anything. But that presupposes that Louise and I even had a choice. And that's where Heisler's screenplay and the story it's based on proves most thorny. If the past, the present, and the future are all the same to Louise, doesn't that sort of imply that she has as little control over her future as we do over our pasts? In teaching her their language, did the Heptapodians take her presumption of free will? She knows what's going to be, but isn't knowing what's going to be impossible unless what's going to be is? There are things to quibble with in the screenplay, of course. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis the film hinges on is considered bunk by real linguists, although that's not to say that the Heptapodians' language wouldn't change their verdict on that score. And the decision to have Jeremy Renner narrate the mid-film exposition dump instead of Amy Adams, despite Adams delivering all the VO both before and after that point, and the film unspooling solely from her character's POV, that decision is baffling to me. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about the film, or its scientific and philosophic ramifications, since I saw it back in November. Arrival has stuck with me, and if that isn't the mark of a great adapted screenplay, I don't know what is.
Our next nominee is Nina Forever, written by Ben Blaine and Chris Blaine. This one runs with the metaphor of an undying relationship in a more sophisticated way than previous zombie girlfriend movies like Life After Beth or Burying the Act. The cruelness and grisliness of the dead girl is played up, as is how kinky a zombie will make your sex life. The meaning wanders off before the end, but a handful of powerful scenes clarifying the theme of grief tie the movie together. Next up, we have Siren by Ben Collins and Luke Petrosky. An expansion of the best segment from VHS, this has some interesting ideas, like the satanic nightclub or the memory-sucking leeches. Mostly I liked how the film made its monster sympathetic without compromising her monstrous nature. Our next nominee is They Look Like People by Harry Blackshear. This is a horror indie that puts the viewer into the brain of its schizophrenic, crafting foreboding voices and an enveloping, unnerving paranoia. When the explicit horror sequences appear, they're suitably disturbing. The is it or isn't it ending builds an intensity and leads to a surprisingly concrete conclusion. Lastly, we have Trashfire by Richard Bates Jr. Richard Bates Jr. returns to his favorite subjects with this one: dysfunctional families, deviant sexuality, and physical deformity. Add a dollop of religious repression and you've got a goddamn work of genius. The script walks a fine line, keeping the characters caustic without making them unlikable. The story takes some genuinely shocking turns, especially with an ending that you will not see coming. Phantom goes to... This one's long overdue. Richard Bates Jr. for Trashfire. Alright, best music. Hey man, movies wouldn't be the same without their soundtracks. The first nominee is Hush. Nominating Hush for best music is slightly insincere, though the Newton Brothers score is quite good. Instead, we're really nominating this one for its sound design. As a horror film about a deaf woman, Hush's brilliant balance between silence, noise, and music is highly effective. The best scenes in the film depend entirely upon it. Hey, what did you think of the music in Kubo and the Two Strings?
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, this is a movie where music plays a really big role in the story.
Yeah.
Obviously, the musical instrument is one of the main points of the film. I just loved the sweeping music, and I love how it has this oriental flavor, but unlike a lot of movies, it doesn't overdo it.
Right.
Next up is Moana. It's come up here before, but I'm a sucker for Disney's fairy tale-based animated musicals. Moana features one of the best scores and collection of songs Disney has offered in a while. Lin-Manuel Miranda, that guy behind the Hamilton thing everybody loves so much, has written some seriously catchy, meaningful songs like You're Welcome or We Know the Way. He knows how to use music too, as each of the song and dance sequences advance the plot. Once again, it's Guy Volin talking about the soundtrack for The Neon Demon.
Because Welcome to the Jungle would be too obvious for Nicholas Winding Refn's grisly meditation on the cutthroat world of modeling in Los Angeles, frequent Refn collaborator Cliff Martinez provided a sparkling, pulsating jewel of a score for The Neon Demon. Martinez emphasizes the thumping bass of club life, while the lush synth textures and eerie harmonic changes suggest that the events of the film are taking place in a dream, or are perhaps part of a ritual or game. Synthetic chirps and growls reminiscent of animal sounds add a hint of lurking danger. It's a sexy score for a movie about beautiful surfaces, reveling in artifice, but with real blood pumping through its veins. Cliff Martinez is nominated for Best Score for The Neon Demon.
Here's Ethan Warren again talking about the original soundtrack of Swiss Army Man.
Swiss Army Man will always be the movie about the farting corpse with a boner. But what it's really about is loneliness and opening yourself up to the vulnerability of connecting with others. And what's so magical about this score is the way that it enhances the impact of those themes. The score plays a real role. Paul Dano's character uses his mindless ramblings to keep himself company, and the score layers Dano's deranged droning to create a sense of this whole world being built out of his inner monologue, and it strands us with these obsessive, lonely sounds, and It's telling that much of the score is built on the phrase, "Crazy, I'm fucking crazy." And the score puts us in that space of a man who's filling his own head with noise. And then Daniel Radcliffe's undead character starts to gain sentience, and these repetitive sounds start to feel like experimentation and someone entering the world. And then we get these handmade percussive sounds as Dano starts wanting to interact with the world, and by the time he's finally back among other humans, there are pianos and strings that are populating this space that used to just be filled by one voice. And that just amplifies the strangeness of the characters suddenly being back in the real world. When I left the theater, I wanted to just keep living in the feelings of this film, and as I drove, I pulled up the track Montage on YouTube. And not only is this track just about as soaring and thrilling a piece of film music as you will ever hear, it's the movie in miniature. It's sincere and it's beautiful, but with this irreverent mischief as the vocals are howling the words montage, montage, all we ever needed was a montage. Swiss Army Man is this overwhelming experience that blends images and sounds in a strange, impressionistic collage, and the emotional, silly, one-of-a-kind a cappella tapestry of a score holds the whole mess together, and we are lucky to have been blessed with it this year.
Alright, lastly, we have Southbound. Music plays a special role in Southbound. The segments in this anthology are connected by a creepy radio DJ played by director/character actor Larry Fessenden. From that ominous station, a stream of creepy, smooth, sinister synth music plays. Provided by the band The Gifted, Southbound's music pays homage to the on-the-road setting while propelling the film with a spooky energy. You should check out Southbound.
Okay, right on it.
So you ready to open the envelope there, buddy?
Yeah, the Phantom is too! Don't tell me what I guess. Swiss Army Man.
Yeah, you peeker.
I really didn't peek. Hey, Best Monster.
Best Monster, Madman, Creature, Machine, Design, or Concept. Always one of my favorite categories. And what are our nominees?
Bebop, Rocksteady, and Krang from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows.
Yeah, and we gotta talk about this because it's very important. 2016 was the year of Krang.
Let me tell you, it was glorious.
How fucking long have we been waiting to get Krang in a movie?
They didn't do him half bad.
Here he is, he's a little brain monster, and he's yelling at people, and he's in a robot suit of armor swinging a mace around, and if you went back in time and showed this movie to me as a 6-year-old, I would probably have my first erection then and there. Let me just tell you right now. I can't tell you how satisfying it was to see Krang in a movie. And you know, you're right. They didn't fuck with it. It's basically Krang from the cartoon.
Yeah.
Not to spend too much time on Krang because Bebop and Rocksteady were also amazing.
How long we would have Bebop and Rocksteady in a movie?
Yeah, and I saw somebody on Twitter said something like the most enjoyable thing about TMNT 2 is how much Bebop and Rocksteady enjoy each other's company.
That is true. They enjoy each other's company a lot.
I really loved it. Alright, our next nominee is The Crooked Man from The Conjuring 2. And you know, they're giving the spooky nun demon the spin-off film, and I think that's bullshit.
What?
Yeah, obviously The Crooked Man was the breakout ghost of The Conjuring 2.
Yeah.
You know how you make Slender Man scarier? You make him British and you give him a bad back.
And you give him a theme song.
Yeah. Here is Anthony Pizzo to talk about Elliot from Pete's Dragon.
Pete's Dragon was a really incredible movie all around, but Elliot was a particular highlight. He's an incredibly cute character, falling squarely into the all animals are dogs camp, with an exaggerated sense of understanding, and the result is a character you fall in love with without having to spend a lot of time with. Which is great, because Elliot spends a lot of the movie's runtime either hiding in the woods or invisible, so economy is your friend. When you do see him, though, the animators do something pretty remarkable. They give him weight. One of the most consistent criticisms you hear of CGI effects and creatures is that there's a weightlessness to them, that they move unnaturally quickly and smoothly, which can be great if you're trying to disorient, but can just as easily take you out of a movie. Elliot's not a particularly graceful creature, and one of the great details is he's not especially great at flying either. There's a great sequence where he goes out looking for his little boy who's been discovered by a park ranger and brought into civilization, and has a journey full of awkward and missteps. Elliot has a lot of trouble landing on the edges of buildings, and when he flies, his wings don't beat very strongly or confidently, and so he jerks and lifts to the side as he's going along. He feels like a creature that's been hiding in the woods all his life and isn't used to going out. On top of that, he's very kind, innocent, just an absolute delight to watch.
Next up is the Urafint and the Thunderbird from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Some people didn't like the giant horny rhinoceros monster.
Really?
Yeah, what the fuck? That was my favorite part of the movie.
My favorite creature in the movie is that little anteater hedgehog thing that goes around stealing money.
That was cool, but I just love the entire sequence with this giant horny rhinoceros monster with the explosive horn, Eddie Redmayne's character trying to coax it into the suitcase. Thunderbird is the big special effects moment. That's the one. Yeah. The film had such cool monster design and so many interesting creatures in it that I don't know why they made the big threat of the movie this indistinct CGI destruction cloud. Hey, this is one we wanted to talk about. Godzilla from Shin Godzilla. Now, this is the second time a version of Godzilla's been nominated for a Phantom. Really, doesn't Godzilla deserve to win Best Monster every year? What did you think of the new Godzilla?
The design was pretty cool. I liked Zombiezilla.
You're right, it did look like a zombie version of Godzilla. These weird, beady little eyes and these crooked teeth, these tiny little arms.
His spikes on his spine look a little different.
They really created a Godzilla that wasn't like any previous version. Really, the most impressive thing was the sheer destructive power of Godzilla in this movie.
With one attack, he levels half of Tokyo.
He has the death ray in the mouth, and then he can shoot the laser beams from his spine.
Yeah.
This is the first time we have a Godzilla that actually breathes fire. People always say Godzilla breathes fire, and he doesn't actually technically do that, but in this movie he did.
Fuck it, you want to see what Godzilla looks like when he breathes fire? Well, here you go, bitches, I'm breathing fire.
He was really fantastic. And our last monster is something a little bit different. It's the Hangman from Hangman. I know found footage movies are played out by this point, but Hangman might be one of the creepier efforts in recent history. The Hangman is a home invader who hides in a family's attic, watching for cameras installed throughout the house. He frequently stands in the same room with kids, just outside of their line of sight. His behavior is unsettling, such as moving things around when the people aren't home, or hawking loogies in their milk cartons. That's when he's not screaming or babbling like a lunatic. It all adds up to make the Hangman one of the more unnerving horror villains of the year. And
I like to do that shit to you. I'll move this just a hair to see if you notice it.
Yeah, and it drives me fucking insane. I hate it when you do that. The winner for Best Monster, Madman, Creature, Machine, Design, or Concept is... He wins because he's fluffy. It's Elliot from Pete's Dragon. Best song, that one's you. We listened to all of these before we recorded, so you should be familiar with them. I don't think you really liked For the Kill from Hardcore Henry.
I did not.
I thought it was a cool, new, wavy, hard rock song that gets me pumped up every time I hear it, and was definitely suitable to Hardcore Henry, which is basically a 90-minute long, non-stop action sequence. The Dragon song from Pete's Dragon is a sweet, folk-driven song, and your response was, yeah, that was pretty.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Next nominee is Wish You Were Here from Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. As we were listening to this, I said, do you like Florence and the Machine? He said, yeah, they're pretty good.
I don't have anything against them.
I've liked most of the songs I've heard, and this is pretty good. One of those modern rock songs that has that big sound to it. One last time, here is Anthony Pizzo talking about the song Shiny from the motion picture Moana.
Shiny may be the single most surprising song in the Disney animated canon, because who expects a David Bowie homage in the middle of a story about a Polynesian girl's tracking down a demigod so he can make right a past misdeed? Yet there it is, sung by Jermaine Clement at Flying Concords, playing a monstrous giant crab named Tomatoa, whose shell is covered in gold. This was deliberate, because songwriter Lin-Manuel Miranda was a huge fan of the Concords, and, upon learning that Clement had been cast, decided to write something for his famous Bowie impression. It's well worth seeking out Lin-Manuel's demo of the song, which is freely available on YouTube, because his Bowie impression is hilarious. The homage is even more overt than in the finished product. Now, a lot of people have called this the film's villain song, which doesn't quite sit right with me, in large part because Tomatoa isn't really the film's villain. He's an antagonist, sure, but he's really just a level boss, and that's reflected in the lyrics. Shiny is mostly about his vanity, not villainy, and the worst thing he sings about doing directly is wanting to eat our heroine, which, not great for her, but it's not exactly an agenda. He's not planning to take over her kingdom or anything. And once he stops talking about how shiny he is, Tomatoa turns his attention to pouring salt in Maui's wounds, and giving us a hint of the demigod's tragic backstory. In that regard, it has a lot more in common with Jafar's Prince Ali reprieve than poor unfortunate souls would be prepared. But then again, neither of those invokes the awesome guitar riff from Ziggy Stardust, so it comes out ahead.
I'm sorry, what movie is this from?
Moana. Oh, Jesus.
Moana, Moana, take me all the way.
Now, I don't know what people's opinions on Sia is. I
hate Sia.
I don't think it's the kind of music I would normally listen to, but Waving Goodbye from the Neon Demon was definitely one of the standout genre movie songs of last year. It's a surprisingly upbeat song for a film that is different. Our last nominee for Best Song is...
The Great Beyond.
From Sausage Party. Sausage Party was one of your favorite movies last year.
My whole thing with that movie is I mistakenly took my 12-year-old sister to this movie. I mean, I knew it was going to be foul, but I didn't know that it would go as far as it did. Honestly, I think that's the best scene in the movie.
Oh, what, the conclusion?
Yeah, the climax, if you will.
Yeah. But what do you think of that opening musical number?
Pretty good. It's very reminiscent of Disney movie openings.
And like I said,
it was written by the guy that used to write.
They got Alan Menken to do the music. It obviously is reminiscent of these 90s Disney songs, but the lyrics are very profane. And you have the German mustard saying how they're going to eliminate the Jews. So it's that kind of movie.
It's excused because it's that kind of movie.
Yeah. Hey, why don't you open that envelope, buddy?
All right, and Best Original Song goes to Shiny from Moana.
Can't really describe how much I loved the song and the sequence from the film. I liked the rest of the movie, but that moment just eclipsed everything else that happened. And now we come to the prestigious Worst Picture category. I consider doing away with Worst Picture this year. Isn't there far too much negativity in the world right now anyway? Yet the Golden Ed Wood, as I sometimes call it, is a Phantom Awards tradition. 2016 provided us with some rather baffling films that deserve discussion. The nominees are Cabin Fever and Martyrs, or Martyrs if you're American. I've been a big proponent of Pascal Lorger's controversial Martyrs, and will even admit to enjoying the original Cabin Fever. But these remakes? Not so much. 2016's Cabin Fever is nearly a shot-for-shot remake of the original, to the point where they used the same shooting script. The American Martyrs, meanwhile, sucks out all the soul and atmosphere of the original, fumbles the attempt at a deeper meaning, and leaves us with less explicit but somehow more depressing gore. The originals have their place in horror history. These remakes have already been forgotten. Our next dubious honoree is Elle. The latest underwhelming Stephen King adaptation, Cell presents its zombies in a ridiculous manner. They seize, gyrate, and release bizarre audio feedback noises. The climax borders on incoherent. The film squanders more or less all the potential its premise has, and doesn't give a talented cast nearly enough to do. Instead, the movie quickly collapses into goofiness and cliches. Next, we come to Maximum Ride, a straight-to-Redbox adaptation of James Patterson's YA series. Maximum Ride revels in the stereotypes of that genre. You've got a convoluted mythology that barely makes any sense, and love triangle bullshit. Add in some laughably bad special effects, gratuitously washed out cinematography, hopelessly melodramatic direction, and performances that range from goofy to barely conscious, and you get one of the year's most disposable releases. And here to defend Worst Picture nominee 9 Lives is Swampflix's Brendan Ledet.
I totally understand why, if you were going to include 9 Lives on any kind of year-end roundup discussion, why it would have to be included as a contender for one of the worst films of the year. But I actually had a lot of fun watching this movie. It was pretty interesting to pack into a crowded theater with a bunch of children and a giant double gin and soda by myself to laugh at this ridiculous film about a businessman who's turned into a talking cat to learn a life lesson. Also, the movie's obviously funny for the level of talent that's wasted on this frivolous premise. You've got Barry Sonnenfeld as the director, who has done some actually well-respected comedies in the past, and you have 2 Oscar Award winners, Kevin Spacey and Christopher Walken, which is a ridiculous waste of talent on this movie. But I think what's really interesting about 9 Lives, and why actually it stands out to me as one of the more fun and representative bad films of the year, is that it marks this nexus where our 90s nostalgia has hit a peak ridiculousness. The premise of a businessman being turned into a cat to, again, learn how to be a better father is so funny to me. It's something that you would expect from a direct-to-DVD Air Bud spoof, and it feels like it was made about 20 years ago instead of something that you'd see in the theater, with plenty of CGI to make that talking cat really shine. I also like the way the movie treats Little Bub as if it's the biggest celebrity cameo of all time, which, you know, it kind of is, considering that this movie pulls in the kind of audience who would waste a lot of time on the internet watching cat videos. And it's also funny how this very silly premise is applied to a movie that tackles subjects like greed, adultery, suicide crises, the moral ethics of leaving a loved one in a vegetative state in the hospital. There's a lot going on in this movie that makes it a lot more fun than people are giving it credit for. But of course, yes, it is a very dumb, stupid movie. I don't know about worst of the year, but I could definitely call it the silliest of the year.
And here to defend Worst Picture nominee Yoga Hosers is Medleyanas.com's Guy Vollen.
Kevin Smith has always had an adolescent appeal. His slangy, sarcastic characters, often outsiders searching for a place in the adult world, naturally appeal to teenage viewers. And that's before we get to the dick jokes, drug jokes, and bodily function humor that are as natural to Smith as his character's hyperverbosity. But Smith is now the parent of a teenager himself, and with this year's Yoga Hosers, he set out to make an actual kids movie that happens to double as a starring vehicle for his offspring. The second installment of the Canadian-themed True North trilogy, following Tusk, Yoga Hosers features the Colleens, a pair of near-identical millennial girls stuck working at a convenience store while living their real lives through their phones and social media. The pair are played by Smith's daughter, Harley Quinn Smith, and Lily Rose Depp. That's the daughter of Johnny Depp, who returns with heavy makeup and a heavier accent as Detective Guy Lapointe. Tusk star Justin Long also makes an appearance, this time as the seedy strip mall guru whose advice is less focused on becoming one with the universe than smashing anything that comes between you and your dreams. Yoga Hosers is a PG-13 horror comedy that seems to be modeled after Gremlins and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but includes such a bizarre mismatch of ideas that it comes out closer to Dreamcatcher. Share it with the 13-year-old in your life, or just check it out for Smith's turn as a Nazi bratwurst. Yoga Hosers is nominated for Worst Picture.
And the winner is Cabin Fever. A truly pointless film. Before we get to Best Picture, we've got a couple of other small awards to talk about here. This is a category we're having for the first time this year, and we probably will never have it again. I have to recognize two performances from some performers you would say are unorthodox.
Yeah, they're definitely unorthodox.
Perhaps even a little hairy.
Yeah.
Best performance by an animal. Two characters I wanted to point out this year. I said earlier that Anya Taylor-Joy was the breakout character from that movie, which is not true. Everybody was talking about Black Phillip.
Yep.
That fucking goat. How can you describe how charming Black Phillip was?
Charming isn't the word I'd use.
Did you find Black Phillip creepy or anything?
Yeah, a little creepy.
A little creepy for a goat?
Yeah.
Hey, next time there's all sorts of creepy satanic shit happening in your house, maybe
Check the goat.
Yeah, maybe you should consider checking out the black Luciferian goat in your barn. Just throwing that out there. Especially when your kids have been telling you the whole time that it talks to them.
And then Steven Seagal from The Shallows.
Yeah, The Shallows is really a 3-character movie, and 2 of those characters are animals. Blake Lively on a rock with a shark swimming around her, and on the rock with her is a seagull. And she names the seagull Steven Seagal. I don't usually like birds, but I gotta say, I came out of this movie a fan of Steven Seagal. Rapport between Blake Lively and the seagull was one of the things I liked the most about The Shallows. 2 special performers we have to honor. Next we come to the Rising Talent Award, which is a award we give out every year to a filmmaker or a writer or even actor sometimes that I think displays a lot of promise and could potentially become a great voice in the genre. And this year it goes to Hector Hernandez Vicens, the director of a film called The Corpse of Anna Fritz, which is a grisly Brazilian thriller that kills off its most reasonable character first, leaving the audience in a morally uncertain area. Who do you root for in this one? The unrepentant rapist or the slightly remorseful rapist? Some people would be put off by that moral ambiguity, but I enjoy it. A number of tense scenarios follow, the title character nearly escaping her captive several times. The shock ending features a blunt but totally appropriate action. Vicens' keen understanding of location and tension showcases him as a talent to watch. And to present the Special Visual Achievement Award to The Love Witch, here is Salim Garami.
The Dirty Trick Anna Biller pulls as director, production designer, costume designer, editor, and composer, to say nothing of writer, for her 2016 feature The Love Witch, alongside the help of cinematographer M. David Mullen, is to be so very much indebted to the aesthetic of the 1960s, despite being clearly set in present day with its cars, that one almost immediately falls headfirst into its old-timey spell like a piece of cinematic, well, witchcraft. This isn't something Biller hasn't done before, as her 2007 feature Viva also indulges itself shamelessly in the same aesthetic as an overt parody of sexploitation from Russ Meyer, while The Love Witch feels like a much darker appropriation of the romantic supernatural series Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie, where a mystical woman is instantly latched onto a man for everlasting love for fun and goofs. Except The Love Witch doesn't have that optimism, and also seems fascinated with the occultish aesthetic of Kenneth Anger in a John Waters-ish sort of way. You see, all that beautiful Technicolor 1960s designs that Biller lifts up herself like a female Douglas Sirk is used as a backdrop for pointed feminist statements on romance, the expected roles of women in romances, and how it paints their identity to be single or unable to maintain a single partner. The light and rainbow-esque costumes with a wonderful jacket that is a cornucopia of color inside, and cliched fireplace living areas and remote retreats with devotion to the fiery red and warm interior browns are all fun and games, but with some truly devastating subtext about desperation and the conservative attitudes of women in relationships. When things get truly violent, the reds have a double meaning to them, for this is just as much a horror film as it is a parody, and that's only another one of their tricks to use a familiarly humorous setting to disarm us. All of this designed and built from the mind of one genius in Biller, an auteur work in the most direct definition of the word, with the help of Mullen's intelligent use of period lighting and the tangible 35mm camera negative to have a genuine physical film stock appearance with popping colors. And if all that feminism doesn't seem your jam, it is thankfully very much mine. It cannot be said enough how fucking gorgeous it is. All that glamorous color is eye candy to a brother like me, that even when I felt bored 30 minutes short of its runtime, I was never not enjoying what I was seeing. So with that in mind, I am proud to be given the chance to announce the Phantom Award for Visual Achievement to Anna Biller's The Love Witch.
And then lastly, we come to a category we do every year, which is our Lifetime Achievement Award. Who are our Lifetime Achievement Award winners this year, JD?
Adam West, Burt Ward, Lee Merriweather, and Julie Newmar.
Yeah, because 2016 was the anniversary of the original Batman series, which I know means a lot to both of us, but you especially.
Yeah, I love this show.
It's amazing that they're all with us still.
Really, I mean, it is. We have met 3 of the 4.
Yeah, we have, actually. I was just thinking that.
They're all very nice people.
Not everybody is a fan of that 66 series series, though I can't imagine why you wouldn't be. We would not have the comic book superhero movie craze we have today without that original Batman show.
Yeah.
We're going to be getting Batman movies until we're dead and beyond. Obviously, Adam West and, to a lesser degree, Burt and Lee and Julie are all icons in the genre. And let's not overlook their other genre works. Lee Merriweather is great in the 4D Man, and Julie Newmar has done many, many films. I love Adam West in Zombie Nightmare.
Zombie Nightmare?
Yeah. Now we have come to the moment everybody has been waiting for. The best sci-fi, horror, and fantasy film of 2016. You want to go over that list of nominees one more time?
Arrival.
Green Room.
Kubo and the Two Strings.
The Neon Demon.
Swiss Army Man.
Trash Fire.
Woo! We got through it together, yay! Really? I forgot about this.
The best sci-fi, fantasy, and horror film of 2016 is Swiss Army Man. Truly the farting boner corpse epic we need right now.
What more could you want?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody from The Dissolve who contributed to this episode. You can find links to all their websites in the description. Hey, we recorded our first episode of 2016, or 2017, Jesus Christ. First episode of 2017, I don't even know what year it is. Before we close out, I do want to say that I apologize for the lack of updates here of late. I know it became this internet meme that 2016 was a terrible year, but for me, personally, it was a pretty rough year. And for that reason and more, there haven't been as many updates recently as there should be. But I'm hoping from here on out, we will have more consistent updates. In fact, the next episode should be coming quickly after this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a commentary.
Go ahead and warn you that it is going to be a commentary.
But what is the commentary?
We're going to be talking about Freddy's Dead.
Damn right we are.
Want to thank all the fans, all the listeners, as always. Wit left a nice comment on the Atomic Age Monster episode, so thank you for that, Wit. And as always, thank you to all our fans and listeners that have been keeping up with us for the 6 years we've been doing this show. 2016 is behind us, and we're looking forward to 2017.
I agree. We'll see you next week, guys.